It's an interesting Sunday morning here on Stu News because we are not in studio. Yeah. I'm sitting here with John Stevens as my co-host this morning. Fabrice, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
can you hear you?
All right.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. You know, it was interesting, Fabrice. We talked yesterday. Fabrice is in psychotherapy, and it's a difficult time for people. And it's interesting after our conversation yesterday that I got an email from the LA Times this morning talking about suicides being up. You know, people are struggling with this pandemic and everything. Fabrice, why don't you talk a little bit? We have Fabrice Paracuellos on the phone, and Fabrice, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're seeing with people, or what you're hearing out there with some of the struggles people are having?
Well, I'm starting to see some problem with isolation. I mean, there's problems with worrying, and there's also problems with isolation, and that saddens me because isolation is really a big problem for us humans. So I'd love for this to be addressed in one way or another.
So what are you advising your clients to do during this time? I mean, because, you know, I know the doctors and things that I work with, that I go see, they're calling me and telling me they're not accepting patients. Is this advice and stuff that you're giving over the phone now? Is that how you're engaging with your clientele?
Oh yeah, in terms of my own practice, I switched 100% to mostly video actually. I've had a couple of engagements by text message, but I mostly, try to help by video remotely, and a little bit of phone as well.
Fabrice, let me ask you a question about that. So how does that affect the effectiveness of treatment in the sense that, psychotherapists and psychologists pick up kind of cues from people when they're with them, and that could be an important part of their therapy. Have you felt that it is an obstacle to treating your patients having to do so remotely?
Well, right now, not yet, because I've only been doing this remotely for 2 weeks, so I haven't quite noticed the changes, and so I'm thankful for that. I'm noticing that it's a little bit different, and there's, like you said, less picking up of things. But so far, I'm knocking on wood. It seems like I'm still be able to be of service.
Fabrice, I had my family over the other day to celebrate a birthday, and what they did is they all came into the backyard, and I talked to them through the screen door. I wasn't engaging them. I didn't get to hug my granddaughter and say hi to my grandson and everything like that. My 3-year-old granddaughter, she looks up at me and goes, Papa, why can't I see you? Why can't I hug you and stuff like that? Are you finding out that kids are going through a traumatic experience with this deal?
Not yet, and I don't have enough data to be able to make a blanket statement. In my experience, though, it seems like kids are actually much more able to process information related to death, and in some ways, and I'm not talking about every kid because every situation is different, but in my experience, usually kids seem to be able to face those issues with, it seems, less anxiety than us adults.
Yeah. So, Fabrice, what I'm seeing in the professional world is, and I know you and I run in that circle together from time to time, is everybody's trying to keep up kind of a brave face. Everybody's saying, yeah, I'm working remotely, but everything's just the same, and, trying to kind of keep a stiff upper lip. I mean, is that the right approach? And eventually, I think that's going to erode, and people are going to be a little bit more open and vulnerable with each other and be in a position where they can help and support each other more because they're letting other people in What do you think about that? Are you seeing that kind of the brave face mentality, and what do you think about whether or not that's the way to go?
Oh, your question, John, goes to my heart because I think what you're mentioning, especially what you're envisioning over the long term of people opening up and sharing more vulnerable, I think is essential to our wellness, and it's essential to communicating with each other, and in some ways letting each other know that, yeah, me too. I have some worries and I have some stresses and I have some difficulties that I cope with. And so therefore, you're not alone in this. And that, from a mental health perspective, is so important. So I'm hoping that out of this crisis will come an increased awareness on the human necessity to relate to each other on a more genuine and, like you said, more vulnerable level.
Hey, John, it was interesting when you, Fabrice, and I were talking yesterday. You were talking about, nowadays getting out means, walking out the front door and walking around your block. And hopefully, in your neighborhood, everybody's walking in the same direction so you can have that social distancing. But one of the things that you were talking about yesterday is, where you're walking down the street now, where you used to walk past homes, people would be out, working in their garage or doing yard work or whatever, and you just kind of blow by them. Now you're taking the time to say hello to people, you're talking to people, and the neighborhoods seem like they're getting more friendly. Talk about that a little.
Well, right. I mean, so first of all, my dog Louie is the most popular member of our household now. He gets walked about 4 or 5 times a day because everybody wants to get out. And, I didn't leave my neighborhood for 2 weeks. But I did walk around the neighborhood, and nobody ignores anybody in our neighborhood. Everybody's waving to each other, and more importantly, if you see somebody you know, or even if you see somebody you recognize, people stop at a safe distance, of course, could be even across the street, and say, how are you doing? How's your wife? How's your kids? And I spent probably 20 minutes talking to a woman that was walking by my house. I learned a lot about her, and I'm sure she learned about me. And it honestly, 3 weeks ago, she would have walked by my house, and I may or may not have waved at her. And we spent 20 minutes talking. And so I think there seems to be. I'm looking for silver linings here as best I can as a community leader, a public servant, and this situation might bring us closer together and have more kind of meaningful connections.
Well, I hope so. After 9/11, it seemed like America wanted to take the opportunity to kind of get closer, to kind of everybody be kinder to everybody. Fabrice, any ideas, have there been any studies ever about when, I guess there's never been a pandemic like this before, but what do you kind of see as we come out of this thing? Do you think people will stay more engaged with their neighborhoods and things like that? Or will people just go back to their everyday life of, jumping in their car and keeping their head down and, going to work with very little communication?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, Tom. And I don't know the answer. I mean, I can tell you what I'm looking for and what I'm hoping will happen, but I in truth, I don't know. Can I correct a little bit what I said a little bit earlier about kids? Because I was thinking about this while you guys were talking. Sure. Is that okay? When I was talking about kids, they seem to be, I want to specify, because I don't think I expressed myself very clearly, they seem to be more resilient to when we talk to them about issues of death than us adults. I'm not saying that they're going to be experiencing less suffering if they actually are experiencing death of a loved one, not at all. But in terms of talking about issues of death, they seem to usually have their head more on their shoulders than most of us, actually.
Well, you talk about talking with kids and everything. There's even another group of people that's at the opposite end of the spectrum. I have a mother that turns 90 years old in 2 months. She's confined to her senior citizen housing. Nobody can go in and see her or whatever. She's confined to her room. And, she's on the verges of some dementia and things like that. And she's having a hard time figuring out why people can't come see her. And she's never been through something like this. It's very lonely times.
Well, not only that, Tom, if I can butt in here, my mom is 95 years old, and my dad died last year, and she moved into an assisted living apartment, and I call her every day. And from my perspective, I'm as concerned about the coronavirus. If she got the coronavirus, she would not survive. But I'm as concerned about the coronavirus as I am just keeping her spirits up. And I will say, though, she's doing terrific. And I think it's interesting. At 95, she survived the Depression. My dad was in World War II. She went through that. And I think that the generation, there's fewer of them these days, obviously, but the generation who are 90, 95, and whatever, actually have some experience here that they can draw from to cope with these circumstances. So I'm really proud of my mom, but it's very difficult. I'm very worried about her.
Right. Fabrice, give us a parting piece of advice that we can tell our family and loved ones in these lonely times what we should be doing to make life better at home.
Yeah, I mean, if the first thing that comes to my mind is recognizing the importance of connecting, and so reaching out, especially for those of us who can reaching out to others, and trying to enjoy each other's as best as we can.
I think I think that's good advice. It's kind of interesting because most married couples, and John, I know you're married, and I know your wife and everything like that, and you guys get up in the morning, you say, hello, let's have breakfast. You have your breakfast, you say goodbye, you go to work all day long. Now you're stuck in the house all day long, 24/7. And as lovely as Amy is and everything like that, I would sense that some angst comes around being cooped up like that for that long.
Well, can you imagine being in that circumstance with me, Tom? I mean, forget about my adjusting to Amy. She's got to adjust to being with me.
Oh, so, yeah, I wasn't worried about you. I have
tremendous empathy for that challenge. But yeah, you're right. It's you just have to figure out how to cope, how to give each other space when they need space. It's not easy. She and I work together, but we work in different sections of the law firm, and we have an opportunity to have some space, and we try to create it here as best we can. But yeah, I've got Amy, I've got my son Nate, and I've got my daughter Olivia. We're all here living together, and we're holding up pretty well.
Well, you also talked yesterday about how difficult it is. Your other son, Tommy, he wanted to. Tommy's a kid that he's grown, but he likes to come home and see you guys all the time. And now during this, you're kind of like, Tommy, you got to stay away because you go out and visit other people. See other people in your life, you can't bring that stuff into our home.
Right. And it's especially hard today because we always have a Sunday family dinner, and Tommy lives just on the border of Costa Mesa and Newport Beach, just about 5 miles from us. And so we see him every Sunday. And so tonight it's going to be sad when he's not there.
Yeah. All right, Fabrice, we appreciate you bearing with us this morning. And coming in here and talking to us. You have a very impressive resume. You've traveled the world and everything like that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, somebody was struggling with some problems and issues, how would they go about contacting you?
I guess the easiest would be to send me a text or give me a phone call.
And how would they go about that? Do you have a number or something you can throw out?
Yeah. Is it okay for me to share that? It's 949-682-9305.
So if you're out there and you're listening and you're struggling, you feel isolation, you feel depression, you feel what so many of us feel during this time, give Fabrice a call, talk to him. I'm sure he can impart some great advice on you.